Before the first rays of the morning light pull back the curtains, there is a deep silence in the kitchen. Only the ticking of the clock can be heard, as if even the walls are tilted inward in anticipation. That strange stillness when the world stops for a moment, when the sun prepares to lift the darkness. There are no announcements, no trumpets, just a soft and certain weight in the air, softly settling over you like a warm shawl. You may not realize at first that change is coming, but in your bones you feel a newness approaching. Like the trees suddenly stilling just before the spring wind blows, or the sea calming just before high tide. This is how transformation often comes into your life. Write 555 in the comments. Now don't just be a spectator, be part of the story. With your support, we will become a huge family of 5,000 people. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join us. Because it's not like a noisy storm, but like a quiet certainty. It softly but radically changes everything it passes by. Imagine a room at dawn, just before the light breaks through the curtains. The air feels heavy, as if the whole house is holding its breath, waiting for something unseen to finally happen. There's no thunder to announce the arrival, just a hush, thick as velvet, that settles on your skin. You might not notice it at first, but deep in your spirit, you sense the shift. It's the way a garden seems to know rain is coming before a single drop has touched the earth, or the way birds pause in the treetops when a storm is on its way. This is how spiritual change often arrives, not loud or brash, but subtle and undeniable, leaving everything in its path forever different. All throughout life, certain people carry a presence that moves like that invisible weather. You won't always see the source, but you'll feel the effect. The room grows warmer, or sometimes a chill rushes in. Ordinary days rearrange themselves as if answering a silent call. These are not people who chase attention, yet attention seems to gather around them like leaves swirling in an autumn wind. Wherever they go, the atmosphere gets rewritten. Old certainties dissolve, quiet convictions rise to the surface, and everyone who encounters them knows something shifted, even if they can't say exactly what or why. Maybe you felt this. Maybe you are this. Maybe you've spent your life feeling out of place in spaces where others seem perfectly at home, sensing the undercurrents while others chat about the weather. You walk into a gathering and suddenly, unspoken truths press up against the walls. You don't have to say much, sometimes you say nothing at all, but hearts stir, questions bubble up, and old routines can't quite hold their shape. It's not because you're trying to make waves. It's just who you are. You are a carrier of change, a vessel of holy disturbance. People often remember you not for your words, but for how they felt when you were around. Your presence lingers long after you've left the room, like the fragrance of a rose after the flower is gone. Yet somehow, as much as you are remembered, you are also misunderstood, unseen in ways that defy explanation. It's as if folks are looking at you through frosted glass. They sense something powerful, but they can't quite grasp the outline. This is both a burden and a blessing, and it's part of what sets you apart for your unique purpose. There's an ancient pattern to this. In Scripture, we read how Joseph carried a dream that nobody else could see, how David played his harp in the shadows long before he was crowned king, how Esther moved through the palace unnoticed by those in power until her appointed time. The ones God chooses to shake the world seldom look like revolutionaries. They are often the quiet ones, the overlooked, the ones who slip through life half invisible until the hour of unveiling. But when God's timing comes, the world is never the same. Think about it. Noah spent years building an ark under cloudless skies. People walked past him, laughed at him, never realizing he was building the very thing that would one day save humanity. In the same way, your spiritual preparation has happened in places nobody else cared to look. Every trial, every strange season of feeling like an outsider, has been part of a holy setup. The ground has shifted beneath your feet not to trip you up, but to root you deeper. The discomfort has not been a curse, it's been a signal that you are destined for more. Sometimes you may wonder why your presence unsettles others, why you face resistance in places that seem peaceful to everyone else. That's because your very existence carries a challenge to the status quo. People sense, without even knowing why, that things cannot remain the same when you are near. Their spirits recognize the invitation to wake up, to look deeper, to let go of comforting illusions. But not everyone is ready to see, and that's why confusion and even opposition can follow the chosen. Think you know the Bible? Subscribe to uncover the stories you've never heard. Don't be discouraged. Remember, Jesus himself was overlooked in Nazareth, doubted by his own family, and dismissed by the crowds who couldn't see past his ordinary background. Yet he moved in quiet power, transforming every life he touched. If you feel hidden, misunderstood, or resisted, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that your assignment is from above. You are not here to be celebrated by the crowd. You are here to carry the presence of God into spaces that have forgotten what real life feels like. Let me encourage you today. The heaviness you feel is not just yours. It's the weight of destiny. You are the torchbearer for your generation, the key holder for doors that have rusted shut. Your peculiarities, your inability to just fit in, your lifelong sense of being set apart, these are not accidents. They are the fingerprints of the divine on your story. Where others see only inconvenience or strangeness, heaven sees readiness and royal DNA. In the years behind you, you've learned what it is to walk quietly, to observe more than you speak, to sense the tremors under the surface when nobody else feels the shaking. You've comforted others even as you longed for comfort yourself. You've prayed in the night, poured out your tears in silence, carried weights that would have crushed many around you. The world may have seen only your calm, but God saw every battle. Heaven counted every sacrifice. All along, your life has been weaving together threads of purpose, sometimes bright and sometimes dark. Moments of rejection were really redirections. Seasons of isolation were really invitations to deeper communion. The doors that closed in your face only funneled you into the hallway where your true calling was waiting. You have survived not by accident, but by design. What people miss is that the true revolution doesn't always come with noise and banners. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a single life refusing to bow to the ordinary. The change you carry is quiet but contagious. Like a seed-splitting stone beneath the surface, your impact grows even when it's unseen. The tides are shifting even when the shoreline looks unchanged. Every time you show up with integrity, every time you choose truth over comfort, you plant a flag in the unseen realm. You are not just living for yourself. Your choices ripple out, breaking old patterns and calling others higher. Your presence, like a gentle rain, softens hard ground and prepares it for the harvest. Some folks might accuse you of stirring up trouble, of making life more complicated than it needs to be. But you know in your soul that you're not here to maintain the illusion of peace. You are here to usher in real healing, to break cycles that have lasted generations, to bring light into rooms where secrets have gathered like dust. Your very life is an invitation to awakening. As you walk forward, let the knowledge of who you are settle deep into your bones. You are not defined by other people's misunderstanding or their inability to put words to what you carry. The world may never know what to call you, but heaven calls you beloved, chosen, and sent. Your reward will not always be applause, but the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you answered your calling and left the world more honest, more hopeful, more alive than you found it. Keep standing. Keep listening. Keep letting the Spirit lead you, even when the way is hidden. Trust that the shifting air, the unexplainable heaviness, the stirring in your own chest is God's signal that your time is near. The same way a river shapes its banks over years, you are reshaping the landscape around you, one faithful step at a time. If you ever doubt your worth, look back and see how many seasons you've survived, how many storms you've outlasted, how many times you were counted out but kept on going. That is not ordinary. That is the mark of someone carrying heaven's assignment. You are not forgotten, not overlooked, not misplaced. You are the reason the air feels different. You are the blessing the world didn't know it was waiting for. And when the day comes that your story is finally told, it will not be the thunder that people remember, but the way the atmosphere changed whenever you walked in. That's legacy. That's spiritual revolution. And that, dear friend, is what it means to be chosen for such a time as this. Think of a quiet river, winding its way through the land. To those passing by, it may look like any other stream, just water moving between grassy banks, nothing more. But those who have lived by that river know a deeper truth. Some waters carry a current you can't measure with your eyes alone. Step into it, and you feel the pull beneath the surface, a gentle but relentless force shaping everything it touches. That's how some souls move through life, not with fanfare or spectacle, but with a silent gravity that bends the world around them in ways most people will never understand. There are people who wake up each morning just like everyone else. They brush their teeth, sip their coffee, head out the door, blend into the crowd. Yet, wherever they go, life seems to rearrange itself. The air feels charged, eyes linger, and unspoken questions float in the atmosphere. Sometimes it's admiration. Sometimes it's suspicion. Sometimes it's a curiosity that dances right on the edge of envy. They aren't asking for attention, but attention finds them. Not because they shout, but because their spirit whispers something the world can't ignore. It's a mystery that often goes unnoticed by the crowd but is felt keenly by the one living it. Imagine carrying a lantern in the night, not to show off, but simply to see where you're going. You don't even realize how much your light cuts through the darkness until you glance back and see footprints trailing behind you, left by people you didn't even know were following. Your journey, once so private, has become a path for others, whether you asked for it or not. For the chosen, life deals from a different deck. The same steps that leave another person unnoticed set off a chain reaction for you. A word spoken in honesty, a gesture offered in kindness, a refusal to follow the crowd. These things become signals in the invisible, stirring up reactions you never meant to provoke. Sometimes you're praised for wisdom, other times you're called stubborn or strange. The same action draws both blessings and challenges, as if the world itself can't quite decide what to do with your presence. Older folks sometimes say, "Pressure makes diamonds." But they don't always tell you how lonely the mines can be while that diamond is forming. When your life becomes a spectacle, when every move you make feels like a test, it's easy to wonder if you did something wrong. Why is it that the smallest slip draws magnifying glasses, while your quietest victories go uncelebrated? Why does your joy sometimes feel dangerous to those around you, and your sadness draw more attention than you ever wanted? There's an old saying about trees that grow on windswept hills. The wind shapes them, bends them, makes them lean in strange directions. Yet, it's those same gnarled branches that survive storms the sheltered trees never even feel. That's how it is with souls chosen for a higher purpose. Life doesn't let you grow straight and safe in the valley. It sends you up the hill, out in the open, where the storms can find you, and so can the sunlight. The hardships you face are not punishments. They are proof that you are being strengthened, shaped for something that flat ground could never prepare you for. People often talk about favor, about being blessed, as if it's all open doors and easy streets. But true favor is a mystery, wrapped in paradox. With it comes scrutiny. With blessing comes battle. The same hand that opens one door may close another. You find yourself walking paths that are both beautiful and bewildering, both celebrated and criticized. Sometimes you're the hero of someone's story, other times you're the villain in a rumor you never started. It's tempting in these moments to try and shrink yourself, to walk smaller, to keep your voice soft, to hide the gifts you've been given so that others won't feel threatened. But remember, the river doesn't apologize for its current. It just keeps flowing, shaping the land, carrying life wherever it goes. And just like that river, your spiritual gravity is not something to be ashamed of. It's your calling. In the silence of your own heart, you may hear questions rise. Why me? Why must my journey be so public, my lessons so hard, my victories so hard won? But listen, dear soul, you were never meant to blend in. You are not here to be lost in the crowd. You are here to be a signpost, a landmark, a living reminder that ordinary life is only the surface of something far more extraordinary. Scripture tells of many who walked this path. Think of Moses, who wandered the wilderness not as a punishment, but as preparation. Think of Ruth, who left everything familiar to follow a calling she didn't fully understand, becoming an ancestor of kings. Think of those disciples, unremarkable fishermen by day, who carried the flame that would light the world when the time came. Each of them was handed a story that made little sense to those watching from the outside. Each of them was tried and tested in ways that seemed unfair. And yet, it was in the secret places, in the struggles that nobody saw, that their true strength was born. Your gravity, your presence, your quiet radiance, it all comes at a cost, but oh, what a return. For every test, there is a testimony. For every burden, a blessing. For every question asked in the night, a morning comes when you understand that your life is not a spectacle, but a sign. You are proof that God still moves, that miracles still happen, that purpose still outweighs popularity. Can you spot the lesson in every legend? Subscribe and join the search. There are days when the world's misunderstanding hurts. There are nights when the judgments of others weigh heavy on your chest. But let those tears water the seeds you're planting. Let their doubts become the darkness in which your roots find depth. The chosen are not chosen for ease, but for impact. You may not always feel celebrated, but you will be remembered. Not for the roles you played or the applause you received, but for the changes you left behind. The lives turned, the minds awakened, the hope rekindled where there was none before. You are the answer to prayers you never heard. The fulfillment of promises spoken generations before you were born. Your struggle is not a sign that you are forsaken, but a signal that you are being fashioned for something the world can't yet see. Heaven's investment in you is too great to leave you unchallenged. You are being trusted with weight because you have proven strong enough to carry it. So, walk on with your head high and your spirit steady. Let the gravity of your presence be a blessing, even to those who can't see it for what it is. Continue to move with quiet confidence, letting your actions speak, your faith shine, and your integrity stand as a witness to all who watch, whether they understand or not. Remember, it's not the easy journey that leaves the deepest mark, but the one traveled by those willing to carry a greater purpose. Let the whispers of heaven guide your steps, and let the love that holds the universe be the force that holds you. Your life, with all its twists and turns, is the evidence that God still works wonders in the ordinary and that those marked for destiny are never truly alone, no matter how solitary the path may sometimes feel. And if ever you forget your value, pause by the river at dusk, watch the light dance on the surface, and remember that some currents run so deep, only heaven and the heart can truly know their course. You are chosen. You are called. You are the one whose story will be told, long after the judgments have faded and the applause has grown silent. This is your season to rise, not because the world understands, but because the Spirit has called your name and prepared you for such a time as this. Imagine a wildflower pushing up through the cracks in a city sidewalk. It didn't get planted in some neat row, didn't have a gardener hovering with careful hands, didn't even have the luxury of fertile ground. Yet there it is, blooming in the middle of the ordinary, catching the sun at a different angle than everything around it. Most people will walk by, hardly noticing, but a few will pause, struck by the stubborn beauty. Some will feel joy at the sight, others will feel discomfort, not quite sure why that bit of color stirs up something deep inside. That's what it's like for those who aren't wired to follow the same old roads. There's something about a person who carries a calling that doesn't fit the usual mold. It's like they walk with a different rhythm, one ear tuned to a melody most folks can't hear. Their presence can change the atmosphere of a room without a single word being spoken. You might call it a spiritual signal, an undercurrent, invisible but unmistakable, that draws people in or sends them running for the door. The funny thing is, that signal isn't always comfortable for the one who's carrying it. It's not something you choose or even understand at first. All you know is that you move through life like that wildflower, sometimes admired, sometimes avoided, but never just part of the background. For a long time, those reactions can feel like a curse. Why do people stare or whisper when you walk by? Why does your laughter light up the right hearts and rattle the wrong cages? Why does your silence make some folks uneasy? The world is full of unwritten rules about fitting in, and when you can't seem to follow them, it's easy to believe something's wrong with you. Maybe you tried to soften your edges, to blend in, to shrink yourself down to the size of your surroundings. But no matter how hard you try, there's still that frequency humming in your spirit, a song written just for you by the hand of heaven. It takes years for some to realize that the awkwardness wasn't an accident. The social fumbles, the misunderstood motives, the sense of being out of place, they're not bugs in your design. They're features stamped into your soul before you ever drew your first breath. The blueprint for your journey was drawn up with a bigger canvas in mind. You were never meant for a path that's already been paved and walked flat by 1,000 footsteps. Your destiny was always calling you to break new ground, to be the first bloom in an unlikely place, to carry a kind of beauty that startles the world awake. Think of Abraham, called out from everything familiar, sent toward a country he'd never seen. He didn't follow a well-worn path, he made one. Or David, overlooked and underestimated, tending sheep out on the hills while everyone else gathered for the feast. His uniqueness was his preparation. Or Esther, who felt like an outsider until the moment her difference became her destiny. These stories remind us, God doesn't build world changers from the common stock. He crafts them in obscurity, grows them in the cracks, shapes them with a touch of mystery. There's a reason your life draws attention, even the kind you didn't want. Light, even in small doses, disrupts darkness. Salt, even in tiny pinches, changes the whole flavor of the pot. You're the one who shifts the energy in a room, who pulls out honesty from the quiet, who makes people feel a bit more alive, or a bit more nervous, just by standing where you stand. That's not arrogance. That's anointing. There is a current of favor running through you, sometimes running so deep that you don't even see its power until someone else points it out. At first, those magnetic moments, when strangers confide in you or critics try to cut you down, can feel overwhelming. The temptation is to hide the best parts of yourself, to silence your own song, to camouflage what sets you apart. But the truth is, trying to deny your spiritual DNA only leads to frustration. It's like a violin string trying to sound like a drum. The world may be more comfortable when you play it safe, but your breakthrough, your blessing, your destiny are all waiting in the territory no one else has dared to claim. Beloved, you are not a mistake. The blueprint stamped on your soul isn't a misprint. The very things you thought were flaws, the tendency to ask deeper questions, the hunger for meaning, the way you feel out of sync with shallow conversation, these are the marks of your true inheritance. They're clues that point you toward a journey off the beaten track, toward an impact only you can make. Remember, the chosen ones have always carried an air of mystery. You may be misunderstood, but you are never unseen by heaven. The shepherds on the hillside saw a star before anyone else did. The prophets felt the wind shift long before the crowd noticed a storm coming. And you, with your strange combination of discomfort and hope, your mix of awkwardness and insight, are carrying exactly the traits required for the miracles ahead. So don't let the sideways glances or whispered doubts make you retreat. The path you walk may be lonely at times, but it's also holy. There's purpose in the pushback, meaning in the missteps, blessing in the battles that seem to come out of nowhere. Every reaction you provoke, good or bad, is confirmation that you are vibrating on a higher frequency. God never wastes a difference. He uses it as a signature to mark those destined to lead, to heal, to transform, to bless. It's time to see your quirks as qualifications, to wear your so-called mistakes as medals of honor, to recognize that you weren't set apart for shame, but for significance. Just as a wildflower doesn't fret about being different from the grass, you don't need to apologize for the light that shines out of you. You are meant to attract attention, meant to stir hearts, meant to awaken dreams in people who never knew they were sleeping. As you step out today, know this: the current that pulls or repels isn't a flaw. It's divine evidence. The pull of your spirit, the gravity in your words, the warmth or challenge in your presence, these are the fingerprints of the Creator on your life. Some will be drawn in, unable to explain why. Others will rush away, rattled by what they feel but cannot name. Let that be. You are not here to convince everyone, only to walk faithfully in the lane carved for you. You are being prepared for encounters that only someone of your design can navigate. Doors will open not because you camped out on someone else's welcome mat, but because your unique code fits locks others cannot open. The journey will twist, sometimes uphill, sometimes lonely, sometimes lined with spectators who don't understand what they're witnessing. But every step off the well-worn trail is a step toward a harvest no one else could gather, a story no one else could tell. When you feel unsure, remember the river and the wildflower. Remember the patriarchs and matriarchs, the prophets and pioneers, the unsung saints who lived unseen by crowds but known by God. You stand in their company. You carry their courage in your veins. Let your feet be light, your heart be open, your eyes fixed on the horizon, not on the trails worn down by others, but on the land God has promised to those willing to walk where few have gone. You were made for this. Let the world see what happens when someone chooses authenticity over acceptance, calling over comfort, spirit over sameness. The design is no accident. The current is not a flaw. This is your blueprint, beloved, and it is extraordinary. Long before language shaped a child's sense of self, certain signs appeared, like lingering in rooms, captivated by shadows only they could see, or catching moods that no one spoke aloud. Teachers sometimes called them peculiar or impossibly wise, trying to classify what simply refused to fit their templates. A sense of otherness, persistent and unshakable, was present from the earliest days, even if the world's explanations always fell short. As realization dawns, a peculiar cocktail of relief and heartbreak can wash over the mind. What once seemed like an endless maze of misunderstandings and unfairness suddenly reveals itself as a strategy so subtle, so intricately woven into daily interactions, that it almost feels calculated. The people trusted the most, those given the most access to dreams and doubts, operated from a script that never made its way into open conversation. The clarity that arrives now is both a healing and a wound, a revelation that stings even as it sets things right. Patterns emerge, gestures of goodwill turn into data points for those intent on maintaining control. Vulnerabilities confessed in moments of honesty become ammunition for future debates. Kindness, which should have disarmed opposition, instead gets spun into accusations of naivete or weakness, until even triumphs are rebranded as accidents of timing or luck. The core of one's being, weaponized by those unwilling to understand it, can feel more like a liability than a blessing. In close relationships, especially those charged with romance or deep friendship, there is often a gradual push toward conformity disguised as loving guidance. Efforts to remold what was cherished at first into something more digestible, something easier to categorize and less likely to disturb established patterns, are presented as helpful suggestions or necessary improvements. But beneath the surface, the message resounds: be less. Change for my comfort. Messages from family and culture ring out like distant bells. Blend in, collect acquaintances, never stray too far from the pack. Isolation is pathologized, interpreted as evidence of some social failing that must be urgently fixed. Every instance of choosing depth over breadth, authenticity over popularity, is quietly counted as a mark against the nonconformist. What is missed by all these external judgments is the essential nature of solitude for those on this path. Loneliness is recast as incubation. The nights spent listening for answers in silence, the weekends given to contemplation rather than crowd-pleasing, are not absences but investments, silent apprenticeships for a calling that will not announce itself in the usual ways. While others gather the trappings of success, these souls prepare to receive something that cannot be measured by numbers or public acclaim. Life, it turns out, has a way of making these unlikely pioneers into guides for the very people who sought to correct them. The example they set, sometimes unwittingly, acts as a tuning fork, setting off waves of resonance in those ready to hear it. Interests that were initially shared as throwaway ideas are developed to mastery, and in hindsight, those who once gave advice find themselves studying the path their pupil has blazed, wondering how it all came so easily. There's an ease in growth and learning that mystifies onlookers conditioned to believe progress must come only through struggle. Where others see walls, these souls find doors. Where the world expects resistance and competition, they slip past barriers, propelled by curiosity and the certainty that what is meant for them will never be denied by external resistance. Success is not an act of aggression but a natural outgrowth of staying true to an internal compass. That very lack of competitiveness, the refusal to turn every moment into a zero-sum contest, is itself a kind of mirror. Friends and critics alike, unsure how to interpret this, may oscillate between drinking deeply from the well of authentic energy and then denouncing it as dangerous or corrupting. The paradox is ongoing. The world both craves and condemns what it cannot easily control. A spirit not easily classified draws suspicion, especially when it refuses to shrink to fit. Multifaceted talents and unusual depths are treated as suspicious, and the pressure to simplify becomes relentless. The inability of others to see the whole picture leads to attempts at reduction, labeling, pigeonholing, and boxing in what cannot be contained. Frustration rises, but it reveals more about the observer than the observed. Amid all this, unseen allies gather. Forces that work in silence begin to nudge circumstances, clearing the way for more aligned companions. Sometimes it feels like losing friends or being pushed out of circles, but in truth, this is the intervention that was always promised. As certain doors close, space is made for true partners in the work ahead. These endings rarely arrive with fanfare. Often they are slow fade-outs, missed calls, or invitations that never arrive. Other times, it's abrupt. A single revelation, a change of address, a shift in priorities that makes continuing impossible. The loss can sting, but with distance comes relief, a sense that burdens too heavy to carry were lifted, and debts not of one's own making are finally erased. Ready for twists, secrets, and ancient mysteries? Subscribe and start the adventure. Through it all, the refusal to betray one's core in exchange for approval has proven itself not only as personal resilience but as an act of service for a world in need of healing. The invitation is not to reform to the world's desires but to be a catalyst for the world's transformation. Each act of remaining true to inner knowing is a strike for freedom, a light in the fog. All connections, whether supportive or adversarial, turn out to have been necessary, each a teacher in the grand curriculum of the soul. Challenges intended to undermine actually revealed a deeper purpose, to act as a living, breathing blueprint for others searching for their own liberation. Fitting in was never the assignment. Breaking the mold was. As the years and lessons collect, the futility of seeking belonging from the wrong sources is exposed. New patterns emerge, relationships that don't demand translation, environments that require no camouflage. The peculiar brand of disruption brought by these souls is exactly what was needed to loosen the grip of illusion, to prepare the world for a new order of being. A final threshold is crossed. The world's misunderstanding becomes irrelevant. The sting of loneliness is replaced by a sense of purpose too urgent to ignore. The time for hiding is past. The field is ready for harvest. The path is open. The world may never craft a proper welcome, but that was never the goal. The work ahead is clear, the mission only just beginning, and the inner fire, untamed and undimmed, blazes as the one true guide.